Most people spend their lives racing against time, counting years, chasing milestones, fearing endings. But what if peace doesn't come from controlling time, but from understanding it? The Stoics believe that life isn't about how long you live, but how deeply you're aware while living. When you stop seeking validation, when you stop performing for the world's applause, something inside you begins to shift. You start to see that every loss carries wisdom, every silence holds truth, and every passing moment is a lesson in presence. This isn't a story about detachment, it's a story about awakening. About building an inner fortress so strong that no storm, no betrayal, no passage of time can destroy it. Because once you master your mind, you no longer fear life's changes, you flow with them. Stay until the end, because what you're about to hear might just change the way you see time, strength, and peace forever. There's something eerie about silence, real silence. The kind that doesn't comfort you, but confronts you. I discovered it one evening when the power went out. No hum of machines, no flicker of screens, just the steady sound of my own breathing. I looked around my apartment and realized that for years I had been surrounded by noise, and yet completely untouched by meaning. I had been living as if time was something endless, until that night, when the clock stopped ticking and the silence began to speak. It told me a truth I didn't want to hear, that most of us aren't afraid of death, we're afraid of awareness. We fill our lives with sound, movement, attention, anything that keeps us from facing how temporary it all is. Every celebration, every milestone, every look-at-me moment is a small distraction from the fact that we are running out of time. I used to believe I was living fully, but in truth, I was performing, chasing validation, counting hours, measuring life by applause. I had mistaken being seen for being alive. That night, in the quiet, I realized I had never actually met myself. I knew my plans, my ambitions, my routines, but not the mind beneath them. When the noise stopped, so did the illusion. I understood why the Stoics sought stillness, why they withdrew from the crowd, why Marcus Aurelius wrote his thoughts in private instead of shouting them from the forum. Because the loud world can only teach you one thing, how to forget yourself. The quiet world teaches you how to remember. The broken clock on my wall became my teacher. Its frozen hands reminded me that time doesn't need to move for life to change. What matters is not how many seconds pass, but how awake you are within each one. Most people count their days hoping for more of them. But the wise know the real question isn't how much time do I have left. It's how much of my time have I truly lived. I started to wonder what would happen if we stopped chasing the calendar's approval. If we stopped marking life by anniversaries, birthdays, promotions, and instead by moments of real presence. What if stillness, not motion, was the truest sign of growth? What if silence wasn't emptiness, but understanding? The thought both terrified and liberated me. Because if that were true, then everything I'd been taught about success, progress, and time itself was wrong. When the lights finally came back on, I didn't rush to turn on the television. I didn't check my messages. I just sat there in the dim yellow glow of the lamp, watching the second hand twitch faintly before giving up again. For the first time, I didn't feel anxious about it. I felt calm. Maybe this is what the Stoics meant by peace. Not a world that slows down for you, but a mind that no longer needs it to. We spend so much of life waiting for the weekend, for the next promotion, for the next year, as if the future holds the permission to begin living. But here's the secret. It never comes. There is no someday. There is only now. And once you understand that, you stop waiting for special days to celebrate. You start living every day as a quiet acknowledgement that you're still here, still breathing, still capable of awareness. That, perhaps, is the only real celebration that matters. If you've ever felt the weight of time pressing against your chest, if you've ever wondered why the noise around you never truly fills the silence within, then this journey is for you. This isn't a channel about motivation. It's about awakening. It's for those who are tired of running, tired of chasing, tired of being distracted from themselves. So if this message resonates with you, if a part of you is ready to stop performing and start perceiving, subscribe to this channel. Not because I need followers, but because I want to build a community of thinkers, seekers, and quiet rebels. People who refuse to let time slip away unnoticed. Every subscription tells me that somewhere out there, someone else is ready to live consciously. Now, before we move forward, I want you to answer a question. Don't rush it. Let it sit in your mind for a moment. If your time were measured not by years, but by awareness, which would you choose? A. To live long, but unconsciously. B. To live briefly, but fully awake. Leave your answer, A or B, in the comments. Because your choice, more than anything else, will reveal how you see life and how ready you are to start truly living it. After that night, silence became my teacher. It started small, 5 quiet minutes each morning before the day began. At first, it was uncomfortable, like meeting a stranger I'd ignored for years. My thoughts, once muffled by distraction, now screamed for attention. Regrets, fears, unfinished ambitions, they all surfaced like ghosts that had been waiting in the dark. But instead of running from them, I listened. And the longer I listened, the more they began to tell me what I had refused to hear. I realized how deeply I had confused motion with meaning. I was constantly busy, endlessly productive, yet rarely present. I had measured my worth by activity, not awareness. My calendar was full, but my heart was empty. The Stoics warned against this kind of blindness, living many years but few days, existing without consciousness. They said that true life isn't the number of breaths you take, but the number of moments you actually notice yourself breathing. One morning, I visited an old watchmaker's shop I used to pass by every day without seeing. The man behind the counter was in his 80s, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted a gear smaller than a grain of rice. When I asked him how long he'd been repairing watches, he smiled and said, "I stopped counting years a long time ago. Counting makes time heavy. Repairing makes it light." I didn't understand at first, but as I watched him work, calm, deliberate, unhurried, it clicked. He wasn't fighting time. He was cooperating with it. Every tick of the clock was not a loss, but an invitation. That moment changed how I saw everything. For years, I treated time like an enemy, something I was constantly running from or racing against. But the Stoics saw time as a mirror, not a threat. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." It's not a warning. It's an awakening. Every passing minute isn't something slipping away. It's something revealing itself. The problem isn't that time moves too fast. It's that we move too unconsciously. I began to notice how society celebrates the wrong things. We glorify beginnings and endings, birthdays, graduations, promotions, but ignore the countless ordinary days in between. Those quiet in-between days are life. They're where growth happens, where character is built, where meaning is quietly shaped. Yet most of us sleepwalk through them, waiting for the next big thing to remind us we're alive. We forget that awareness itself is the event. The more I studied Stoic philosophy, the more I realized it isn't about detaching from the world, but engaging with it differently. The Stoics didn't reject time. They respected it. They didn't fear aging. They feared wasting potential. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Those words haunted me. How much of my life had I already traded for noise, comparison, and empty motion? How many days had I lived without truly being there? I started to change small things. I stopped checking the clock during conversations. I began walking without music, eating without a screen, speaking less but meaning every word. It felt strange at first, almost too slow, But slowly I realized I was experiencing more life in those few quiet minutes than I had in years of rushing. Time, when faced fully, stretches. The same hour that once vanished into distraction now feels endless, alive, generous. But here's the paradox. The more you honor time, the less you fear it. Because when you finally see how fragile it is, you stop wasting it on trivialities. You stop chasing recognition and start pursuing depth. You stop trying to spend time and begin to inhabit it. That's the difference between living and existing. Existing consumes time. Living transforms it. The broken clock on my wall hasn't moved since that night, and I've never fixed it. It reminds me that time doesn't need hands to teach you. It doesn't even need to move. It only needs your attention. That's the real measure of a life well lived, not how long it lasts, but how deeply you're aware of it while it's happening. So now, when I look at that still clock, I no longer see something broken. I see a reflection of what the Stoics were trying to teach all along. That the only moment that truly exists is the one you are conscious of. Everything else is illusion. And in that awareness lies a freedom that no passing hour can take away. The more I slowed down, the more I began to notice the invisible chains I had lived with for years. The need to be seen, to be praised, to be told I was doing well. I realized that much of what I had called ambition was really a hunger for validation. It wasn't about growth. It was about applause. And applause, I learned, is the most deceptive form of approval. It vanishes the moment the noise fades. The silence that follows always feels heavier than before. I remember one afternoon scrolling through the digital highlight reel of other people's lives. Everyone looked radiant, successful, fulfilled. I felt a strange emptiness settle in my chest, that quiet sense of not enough. It was absurd. I had a life I once prayed for, yet somehow it felt smaller when compared to someone else's illusion. That was the moment I realized how modern life rewards performance, not presence. We've mistaken visibility for value, forgetting that the brightest lights often burn the fastest. The Stoics warned against this long before social media existed. They understood that dependence on recognition is a form of slavery. You may appear free, but your peace belongs to others, their opinions, their moods, their fleeting attention. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." When I first read that, I felt exposed. I had lived my entire life seeking evidence of my worth in the eyes of others. Every compliment was a tiny drug. Every silence, a withdrawal. I began an experiment. I stopped announcing my achievements. I stopped sharing every thought, every photo, every proof that I existed. I wanted to know who I was when no one was watching. At first, it felt like erasure. My absence from the noise made me invisible. But over time, invisibility became liberating. When no one is watching, you stop performing. You start living. The applause fades, but what remains is something quieter and far more stable, self-respect. It wasn't an easy transition. Some friends mistook my silence for arrogance or indifference. They didn't understand that I wasn't withdrawing out of bitterness, but out of clarity. The Stoics called it apatheia, not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. To stand unmoved not because you don't care, but because you care correctly. To direct your energy toward what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, your integrity. One night I sat alone at my desk and asked myself a question I had avoided for years. Who am I without recognition? The answer didn't come right away. It came in the small things, the calm after a storm, the satisfaction of doing something right even when no one saw it, the quiet confidence of not needing to explain yourself. That's when I understood. Freedom isn't found in being admired, it's found in not needing to be. When you detach from validation, you don't become cold, you become clear. You stop bending your life to fit expectations that were never yours to begin with. You learn to measure success not by reaction, but by alignment. The world might not applaud your stillness, but the mind does. It rewards you with something applause never can piece. Now when I walk through crowds or scroll through the endless noise of digital lives, I no longer feel the pull to compete. I feel compassion instead. Because I see what I used to be, a person searching for proof of their own existence in the reflection of others. But the truth is, once you understand your worth, you stop looking for mirrors. And in that realization, a quiet kind of power is born, the kind that doesn't need to be seen to be real. It wasn't until loss entered my life that the lessons of detachment truly made sense. You can read 1,000 words about impermanence, but until something you love is gone, the truth stays theoretical. When my mother passed away, time suddenly became very loud. Every clock seemed to tick a little sharper, every sunset looked more final. I used to think grief was about holding on. But real grief, I learned, is about learning to let go without losing love. In the months that followed, I began to see time differently. It no longer felt infinite or even neutral, it felt sacred. Every ordinary moment shimmered with a kind of fragility I had never noticed before. A shared meal, a short walk, a laugh that arrived and vanished before you could capture it. All of it temporary, all of it irreplaceable. The Stoics were right. It's not death we should fear, but never beginning to live. I had spent so many years waiting for some future peace, always postponing presence, as if life would someday slow down enough for me to start paying attention. But death teaches you that time doesn't wait for readiness. It moves with or without you. I remember sitting by a lake one evening, the same lake my mother used to visit. The water was still, reflecting a bruised sky. I thought about how everything she once touched still existed, the trees, the air, even the chair she used to sit in, but she was gone. And yet, somehow, the world didn't feel empty. It felt honest. Because nothing about existence is permanent, and that's what makes it beautiful. Impermanence isn't cruelty, it's precision. It's what forces us to see clearly, to love deeper, to stop wasting the hours that will never return. The Stoics called this awareness memento mori, remember death. Not as morbidity, but as medicine. To remember that you could leave life at any moment is not to live in fear, it's to live awake. It humbles you. It strips away the illusion that tomorrow is promised. It forces you to decide what truly matters now. Every sunrise becomes a gift. Every breath becomes a small rebellion against oblivion. After my mother's death, I began to notice how often people run from mortality. They drown it in parties, distractions, goals, as if pretending not to age will stop the clock from moving. But the denial of death doesn't protect you, it only blinds you. The more you avoid it, the more it controls you. Acceptance, however, brings freedom. Once you stop resisting the truth that everything ends, you stop fearing the end itself. You start to measure life not by longevity, but by depth. Not by how long you existed, but by how awake you were while existing. One day, I walked back into that same bookstore where I'd once met the old watchmaker. The shop was empty. I asked the woman behind the counter about him, and she told me he had passed away the previous winter. She pointed to the corner of the room where his tool still, untouched. For a moment, the air thickened. Then, oddly, I smiled, because I realized he had been right all along. Counting time makes it heavy. Living it makes it light. And as I left the shop, I looked up at the sky, gray, soft, infinite, and felt no sadness. Only gratitude. For him, for her, for everyone I've ever lost. They had all become part of time itself, and time, in its quiet way, was still giving. That's the strange grace of mortality. It doesn't steal from you. It teaches you what to cherish. It turns life from something to possess into something to participate in. And in that participation, you finally understand what it means to be alive. Since that day by the lake, I've stopped waiting for life to slow down. I stopped trying to pause time or fight it. Instead, I began building something inside me, something that could stand still even when everything around me kept moving. The Stoics called it the inner citadel, a fortress of the mind that no storm could breach. At first, it sounded abstract, almost poetic, but when life began testing me again, I understood its necessity. Because peace is not found in the absence of chaos. It's found in your ability to remain calm within it. There was a period when everything seemed to crumble at once. Work collapsed, a friend betrayed me, and the person I loved most began drifting away. In the past, I would have fought desperately to control the outcome, to argue, to fix, to plead. But this time, something was different. I didn't resist the storm. I stood inside it. I let it rage around me while I guarded the only thing that truly belonged to me, my response. The noise outside didn't silence me. It clarified me. And in that clarity, I discovered a strange strength. It wasn't the kind that dominates, but the kind that endures. I realized then that the greatest discipline is not control over others, but control over the self. Most of our suffering doesn't come from events themselves, but from the stories we tell about them. We turn inconvenience into tragedy, rejection into humiliation, endings into proof of failure. But those are interpretations, not facts. Life's events are neutral until we assign them meaning. The inner citadel is where you decide which meanings are allowed to live and which should be cast out. It doesn't happen overnight. Building that strength is slow work, daily work. For me, it began with small practices, 5 minutes of reflection before the day began, 1 page of journaling before sleep, a long walk without my phone, a single deep breath before responding to anger. Every act of awareness laid a brick in that fortress. Over time, I began to notice how little could truly disturb me. Insults lost their sting. Delays lost their urgency. I no longer needed life to behave a certain way for me to feel okay. One morning, during a particularly difficult week, I found myself sitting once again in silence, sunlight creeping through the curtains. I thought about everything that had happened, the losses, the betrayals, the passing years, and I felt no bitterness, only gratitude. Every wound had become a teacher. Every disappointment had forged discipline. Every ending had pointed me back towards something unshakable inside. I realized then that strength doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from surviving it with grace. This is what the Stoics meant when they spoke of freedom, the ability to remain whole no matter what breaks around you. Not because you're numb, but because you're grounded. The world will always bring noise, chaos, loss. But the person who has built their inner citadel no longer fears those things. They know that whatever happens outside cannot touch what is within. That's not arrogance. That's awareness. It's understanding that the only true possession in life is the state of your own mind. Sometimes people ask me if this way of living makes you cold, detached, less human. But it's the opposite. When you're no longer enslaved by emotion, you can finally feel without drowning. You can love without clinging, act without expectation, lose without despair. You become more present, more compassionate, more alive. The Stoics didn't aim to suppress emotion. They aimed to master it, to channel it toward virtue instead of vanity. And when you do that, even suffering becomes meaningful. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that peace is not given, it's built. Brick by brick, habit by habit, thought by thought. You build it every time you choose patience over panic, reflection over reaction, purpose over comfort. And the day you stop being ruled by the world's noise, you realize something profound. You were never meant to control life. You were meant to align with it. So if you're listening now, and you're tired of feeling tossed around by circumstances you can't control, begin here. Start with 1 breath of awareness, 1 small act of stillness. Build your citadel. Protect your mind. Because when you master your inner world, no external chaos can destroy you. If this message speaks to something inside you, subscribe to this channel. Not for me, but for you. For the part of you that's ready to reclaim peace, to rebuild strength, to live with clarity in a world that thrives on confusion. Every video, every reflection here is another brick for your inner fortress. Together, we're not just learning philosophy, we're practicing freedom. So take a deep breath. The storm outside will keep coming, but now you have a place to stand. And that place, quiet, steady, and unbreakable, has been yours all along.